Hey everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome once again to TYTSports, and we're talking WWE today. I, as always, am your host, Josh Gibbs, aka Chief Joshiola. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I really hope you enjoyed this discussion. I hope we get some good talks going on in the comment section about this topic because it's a great one that you can probably have your own opinion on. So let's dive right into it. Bret Hart, guy's a legend. No one argues that he's a legend. And podcasts now are all the rage, especially podcasts from people on the inside of things in sports entertainment, stuff like that. Stone Cold has the Stone Cold podcast, which is really fantastic. Jericho has Talk is Jericho, another fantastic podcast. And Bret Hart has Bret Hart Radio. And this is an unfiltered one-way communication tool for Bret Hart to pretty much say anything he wants. And it's now gotten, and this isn't the first time he said something, but it's gotten to the point where he sounds like an old man yelling at people to get off his lawn. It's a little bit ridiculous, if you ask me. So recently he was talking about the WWE 2K video game franchise. And he says that he went to go meet with some of the video game guys and stuff, and he asked them why was Triple H ranked a 98 and he was ranked like in the high 80s or something like that. And the guy kind of laughed it off and said, he's the boss, so whatever, we got to suck up to him. And I mean, it was probably a joke on the guy's part, but apparently Bret took it really, really personally. And he said, and I quote, "It pissed me off. I thought, I don't care how many titles Triple H wins. He could never lace my effing boots up. Period." You gotta be kidding me, man. You are getting mad over an arbitrary ranking in a video game, something that Triple H has nothing to do with. I find it highly unlikely, seriously unlikely, that Triple H calls up the 2K franchise people and says, hey, you better make sure I'm rated 98 because, I'm kind of the boss, so do that. I don't see it happening. It's ludicrous. He's got so many other things to worry about. I seriously doubt it. So the guy who said that probably was, he's just joking around with him. Bret even says he kind of laughed it off. But apparently it made Bret angry. This is the thing he has chosen to get ornery about in his old age. And it really bothers me that he uses this one-way communication tool of a podcast to say something like that. If you had a problem with it, why didn't you tell them? Why couldn't you be a man and say something to them at the time, or call up Triple H and say, hey, if you really think he has something to do with it, why don't you tell him to rank you higher? If it means that much to you, why go on a podcast and badmouth the COO, the future head, the king in waiting of the WWE? It just doesn't make sense to me. And this also dovetails on comments he had made not that long ago about Seth Rollins. Now, back in July of last year, Seth Rollins broke John Cena's nose. They had a fantastic match on Raw. He did this Sagat-style tiger knee right to his face, busted his nose all up. It was a fantastic match because both guys are really great workers. They worked well off each other. Complete accident. Not done on purpose. No way. Freak accident. They finished the match. It happened. And then Rollins, being the heel that he was, rode it for a while and kept bringing on pictures of him with his nose busted up and stuff and just laughing at his expense. It was fantastic. He called it unprofessional. He said it's really strange that a guy like Rollins, who I have respect for, so he did this weird compliment sandwich where he says something nice, then says something mean, then says something nice again. He calls him reckless, said if someone kneed me in the face like that, I'd meet him in the back dressing room with a baseball bat. There's no excuse for that. This is ridiculous. That, to me, is more unprofessional than what Seth Rollins did in the ring. Injuries happen. Bret is basically saying, if you would have accidentally done something to me in the ring, I couldn't have looked at that and said, hey, accidents happen. That's our business. It's simulated violence. I get it. Let's move on. No, you would have retaliated against someone in the back. That really would have been your solution? Are you insane? That's unprofessional. That's taking it to a whole nother level that it doesn't need to be at. It'd be one thing if he had done it on purpose, but there is absolutely no indication that that is the case. In fact, Rollins talked about it and said how awful he felt. And he and John Cena, the performers, the ones who it really matters with most, mended it, and it was fine because they are both professionals. They understood these things happen. It sounds to me like Bret Hart is taking his old school mentality and applying it here. Bret Hart is the excellence of execution, probably one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time. He was not a high flyer. He's not a high-risk maneuver guy. He's nothing like that. All of his moves were stuff that you really needed to have detailed knowledge on. Harking back to days like Dean Malenko and even older wrestlers who really were mat guys. I mean, that's how wrestling got its start, is they didn't want to see high-flying luchadors and stuff like that. Not in America anyway. It was guys who were so technically proficient at grapples and kind of a weird mixture of Greco-Roman wrestling and entertainment. That's how wrestling came about. So that's what Bret is living under. But he needs to realize that times have changed. Professional wrestling is a lot different now. The showmanship thing has been turned up to 11. So you can't just be a great grappler and that's it. The closest thing we've had to Bret Hart in recent memory is Daniel Bryan. He was a fantastic grappler, really great technical wrestler, but he was also a great showman. He took a lot of risks, and he was the everyman. People loved him. And Bret Hart had a lot of that too. Bret Hart was like 6'1", 200 and something pounds, 230. He was not, this Adonis that other wrestlers were. And so a lot of people gravitated towards him. And Daniel Bryan the same way. People saw themselves in these men. And so now for Bret to take these really strange sour grapes and throw it out there and say, that's reckless, it's careless. Why can't you tell him, if you really feel that way, why don't you call Seth Rollins up? Which apparently he did not. Because when Seth Rollins heard about it, he spoke and said, that really sucks. Bret was a guy who I respected. And so for him to say something like that, in an interview is really painful. Now Bret didn't say these on his podcast. He said it to Sports Illustrated, arguably one of the most reputable magazines out there for sports. So it's not like it was on a blog that nobody's going to hear, or even a podcast that few people are going to hear. It was Sports Illustrated. So yeah, that's gotta hurt. You would think he would have enough professionalism to call him on the phone and say something to him. If you really felt that way, why don't you be a man and say it to his face? Or tell him how you feel. But no, you had to say it in an interview where the guy can't defend himself. So Rollins responded when he was on Jericho's podcast and said, yeah, it sucks. Bret was my role model. And for him to think that I'm somehow less of a performer or that I intentionally did this or that I was reckless and careless, that's ludicrous. Now, Bret also made a snarky comment about Rollins' injury. When he got hurt, Bret basically, he said, quoting, "The other thing is, when you're the champion, you have a responsibility to not get hurt. You have to be spot on." That's completely asinine. That's so ludicrous. You talk about looking in hindsight. This is a guy, Bret Hart wasn't injured very often, but to be fair, he was put out with a concussion from a super kick by Goldberg. So let's not talk about how you should never get hurt when you're champ or you've got a responsibility. Give me a break. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster than you all ever were. That's not a knock on Bret Hart. What it is the business has changed, and Bret needs to realize this. And unfortunately, he can't take that into account. He can't put his feelings aside. He thinks it's still the same old days when you got to work safe, don't do anything too high risk. Well, then the audience isn't interested. The audience wants the high risk. They want that kind of stuff. And Seth Rollins is a phenomenal worker. He does some great spots. He's in great shape. And accidents happen. You can't predict them. These in any sport. You don't play to get hurt, but at the same time, this is sports entertainment. You have to entertain us. So it just seems that Bret Hart's not getting it. And I think a little bit of this is still some resentment. I don't think he's truly forgiven the WWE for their really sordid past. And I think it comes out in things like this, where he takes these little jabs. So he's trying this death of 1,000 cuts kind of thing, where he says, oh, well, everybody thinks me and Vince have made up, but I'll still talk trash about you. And there's nothing you can do about it because I have this unfiltered medium in my podcast. And I can say whatever I want about whomever I want. So that's what Bret said. What do you think? Do you agree with Bret? Do you agree with me? Do you have your own opinion? I want to hear it. TYT Sports wants to hear it. Put it in the comment section below. Let's have a great talk about it. Our last video, over 11,000 views. Thank you all so much. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. I know TYT Sports appreciates it, and that's why they keep asking me to do these videos. It's all because of you. So thank you all so much. I'll see you in the comment section. Bye-bye.